All right, man. Welcome to the Crow Discovery Project. I wanted to get a clip out, talks a little bit about satellites. Back in the old days, you will find clips on my channel where I was still assuming that satellite tracking applications were showing me a true thing. I later went back and began to logically deduce that satellites do not exist as they are described. We're going to go through old clips to new clips demonstrating what anyone who wants to go out and film coming through the center frame here will see. They're these little black round things for the most part. These clips that look like this were shot with my 8-inch Meade telescope from the 1990s and a Canon T2i. And we're going to run through a number of these through time up to the modern time. And you can tell this one's quite a bit closer, right? Of course it is. Actually, all these things are much closer than the average person thinks. This is shot with the full spectrum camera. It was shot with an 11-inch Celestron telescope. This is a Canon EOS 5D Mark III full spectrum camera. That black dot in the center is junk on the sensor. But what we're going to do here, I believe Croat shot this one. We're going to track off. If you look, you can catch him out there near middle frame. He's going in a perfectly straight line. It's the pan of the telescope. You'll see some white dots. Those are stars being picked up by the full spec camera. But a lot of people come and say, hey, I see satellites. And I say to them, no, what you are seeing is lights in the sky. Coming in at the bottom, very slow. Tiny little guy down there. What they're looking at is lights. And recently I saw a satellite map that shows like a globe and how many satellites are supposedly around us. Many thousands. Depending on what you look at, you will find from 15 to 30,000 satellites. And that does not include the supposed space junk. I saw a good mathematician do a breakdown that if that was correct, we would expect to see from 1 to 500 satellites transit the moon every, I forget what it was, hour or 3 hours or whatever. Anyhow, a lot. What you're seeing here is many thousands of hours of filming, sometimes shooting a week or 2 weeks or more just to catch footage like this. If you're keeping your eye on the screen, you'll pick up the movement. Now, this is shot with a 12-inch Meade that I sent back because Meade does not make good telescopes, and this is with the Nikon D800E camera, 36 megapixels, so you can start to really see what megapixels do for you in the zoom and in the initial filming of an object. Anyhow, to get back to it, anyone who wants, this is back to the old equipment, anyone who wants to go out and spend endless hours filming, you will eventually film objects like this for the most part. There are other things that I have filmed, but 90-some% of everything you film transiting the moon will look like this. These do not look like satellites. These are much closer than we have been told. As I have covered in older clips, I had an optics expert break down two of the systems I used, the 8-inch and the 11-inch, with the ancillary cameras I was using. And if you do the math, if something like this would probably be claimed to be in half geosynchronous orbit, which is 11,000 miles. I forget how many pixels across this object is, but when you begin to calculate them, they would be absolutely enormous. So I can tell you two things based on many years of filming. This is predominantly what you will film transiting the moon. They are not satellites. They are much closer than even probably what we would call space at roughly 100 miles. And that's what you will find. So there it is, man. I would urge everyone, go out and you know, get binoculars or whatever and watch the moon, and you will in fact find out this is what you film mostly. And you will begin to put together that these things are not satellites. Satellites do not exist as they are described, and certainly not in the numbers they are described. And whatever these things are remains to be seen. There it is. You know what? I'll let everyone have a closer look at some of this footage again. I'll run it one more time. There was actually more things I wanted to add. Anyone who goes and gets tools that supposedly tracks satellites, Stellarium is one of them, what you will quickly find out is what I found out. I spent all this time like waiting for transits in Stellarium, and then I'd go out there and I'd be sitting and I'd say, well, wait a minute, there was supposed to be a transit at this time or that, and it would never happen. So I started looking into things. The first thing that you're going to be told about any of the satellite tracking things is they're not accurate. And not are they just not a little accurate, they're a lot not accurate. To the point Where back in the day when I was still assuming that those tools were correct and that I was filming satellites, I would accept anything that was within 10 or 15 minutes of the reported time from the tool. 10 or 15 minutes. And if the trajectory was close, well, that's all nonsense when you begin to logically break it down. If the trajectory is even slightly, even a fraction of a degree off, over time, it's going to put that satellite in a totally different area if those maps were correct to begin with. You can look up that they are based on, oh shoot, I've forgotten the name of it, but it has to do with the Air Force tracking place there in the mountain. That's the Stellarium claim, but all of them. It's a bit like the GPS. We used to be told, oh, your GPS can't be that accurate. It's so many thousands of feet off because we don't want anyone to get that accurate information. Well, now look at us. That was obviously nonsense because every car with GPS is told in another, 30 feet, turn left. So now your GPS is right on the money. You can see the nonsense that is built into these things by comparing it to other things. But to get back to satellites, I've never filmed anything that looks like I would expect a satellite to look. I've filmed some things that were a bit fuzzy, and if you stretched your imagination, you could kind of say, well, maybe that is a satellite with one wing or something like that, but only a couple, and they're not in very good focus. As the equipment got better, all those black dots we were filming came into perfect focus, and I would also mention, anyone who wants to do this, you should always set the depth of field on your camera so that everything is in focus, not only from the moon, but as far back away from the moon as you can possibly get. I suppose you might want to do it the other way, where anything too much closer than the moon is out of focus. If you're a genius with cameras, you might be able to start to judge distance of these objects. But there it is, man. Satellites don't exist as they're described. I've said many times rockets are not going to space. If you folks have an open mind and you challenge these things, you'll come to understand what's being said here. There it is, man. Cheers.